on to listen to some students, their perspective on mental health and what they think are the causes and solutions. So, Nandini, I'm going to hand it over to you to take it from here. Um, let's listen to all of you.
Hi, first of all, I'd like to say it's an honor to be here. I'm very glad I got this opportunity. So today, basically, what we are going to talk about, the four of us, is our perspective. We're all teenagers, and we're going to give our perspective on mental health. We all have a background in it. Our first panelist is Saina Khanna, and she's actually a YouTuber and she's studying psychology. So, I'm looking forward to hearing from her. Our second panelist is Divija Manaktala. She is also extremely passionate about the whole concept of mental health and doing a lot for it. Our third panelist is Kian Godwani. He has actually founded an entire organization called Happy Inc. to further the reaches of the hold of mental health, the people who may not have access to it easily. So and personally, I'm Nandini Bhattacharya. I just finished the 12th grade. I'm going to start studying psychology this year. And I'm also, as everybody on this panel, extremely enthusiastic to do this. This is an important conversation that we need to have. So, I'd like to begin by asking Saina. I'm so sorry if I got your name wrong. What do you define mental health as? What to you is mental health?
So mental health to me, the fact that we talk about it as separate from the entire concept of health, that in itself is where the problem begins. Because if you go and today, if you search for the definition of a healthy person by the World Health Organization, it clearly states that a healthy person is somebody who is mentally, physically, and in every way a healthy person. However, we tend to have the sense of detachment from the brain because we tend to differentiate between mental and physical health. And I've always spoken about how that doesn't make sense because the brain is very much a physical, tangible organ, just like the liver or the heart or anything else. So mental health to me is my brain's health is just as important as the health of the liver or the heart or anything else. So it's mental health is health. So for me it's just something so basic, and it's sad that we still have to educate people about it. We still have to talk about it. I'm glad we're having these conversations, but I just feel like it's so basic, and by now it should just be something that people are comfortable talking about, but they're not, which is why we're talking about it today.
Yeah, you made a very good point when you spoke about how mental health shouldn't be separate from the general concept of health. I found that very interesting. Divija, do you have any more to say to add to that? Do you have any opinions on that?
No, I totally agree with her because we don't give as much importance to mental health as we give to physical health, and we quite a lot segregated in two different things. We don't actually even notice that being healthy mentally and having, being calm mentally is as important as being healthy physically and being calm physically. So that's a really good point there.
Yeah, that's great. I guess we're all in agreement with that. So since Saina pointed out that there is an issue over here, we have an issue in this entire sector. So Kian, what do you think the issues are? What do you see as the biggest problem right now that teenagers have to face with mental health?
Yeah, okay. So, being a teenager myself, I've seen so many problems related to, talking about mental health that come in the way of how you can be open about your problems. And I think the first problem for me is that I think we've glorified mental health. It's not like when I go to a doctor and say my elbow's paining, the doctor gives me a standing ovation, like, wow, Kian, thank you for coming here. I went to the doctor because I wanted to be diagnosed. I wanted him to listen to my problem and help me out in that situation. So I'm not looking for standing ovations, right? And I think mental health has become this sort of thing that when you talk, it's like, wow, man, brilliant. But no, I think when people talk, they want to be heard, they want to be understood, and they want to be supported. And that's enough. That's all they need. And that's more than what they need. That's what's required, right? So when you glorify something, it means that you have to be brave, and asking people to be brave, in situations where they could be vulnerable, that's not fair at all. So, number one, you can't glorify mental health. It should be normalized, not glorified. And I think
Because
in
as
these
I said, it's something
situations,
so basic. It's
exactly,
so basic.
exactly.
Nobody should be called brave for doing something as basic as going to a doctor for, as you said, a paining elbow. In the same way, if you're having symptoms of, say, depression or any other mental illness, why is it that that is termed as something brave? Having a mental illness is not brave. It's just something, it can happen to absolutely anybody.
Yeah, I completely
Sign
agree.
1 second, Kian. That those are great points, but I have to ask you to not interrupt when somebody's speaking. I will get back to you. I'm so sorry, but thank you. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the second problem is that we stereotype problems to certain age groups. So it's sort of like horoscopes now. If I'm a teenager between such and such age, that means I only have these problems. And I think that that's completely wrong. And I get this question asked very frequently. What common problems do teenagers face and stuff like that? And I don't think that's the right assumption at all. There is a vast spectrum of problems that could happen, and what the problem is, it doesn't matter, because it can be different for all 7 billion of us. So it's important that instead of focusing on stereotyping and identifying, focus on listening and providing an environment where people can talk about these issues. And finally, I just want to say that there are a lot of wrong beliefs in society. I mean, I too was a victim of this, because I had no idea about what mental health was. But when I went for counseling because I needed it, I got to know how profound and important just talking, listening, and opening up about your mental health is. And I think that all of these wrong beliefs in society, there are so many. I mean, I'm sure all of us know about them. They can all be addressed, just by educating people about mental health and making these services more widely available.
Yeah, those are some great points. I completely agree with all of them. Saina, do you have anything to add to these? Do you have any opinions about what he just said?
I actually do. And, Kian spoke about being a teenager, being a student, especially I feel, being a teenager and student in these uncertain times where we're so uncertain about what's to come next. I mean, people whose boards have been cancelled, and, it's really put a lot of things into perspective about, what is really important in life. Growing up, I very often, I want to talk a little bit about school and everything. So I found myself basing my worth a lot on my grades. And, that was very detrimental for my mental health. I'm also, I also have OCD, chronic OCD, and I found that my teachers weren't very understanding about it because I didn't have what would generally be classified as a learning disorder. So I was often met with statements like, well, you don't have dyslexia, so what's your problem? Why can't you study? But because my problem was because of my OCD, I'd just get stuck on one single page. I'd keep doing it over and over again, and I would never be able to move on. So I would never be able to finish my syllabus like that. And, I did not have that sort of backing from my teachers. I am very fortunate to have a very supportive family, and my parents were very encouraging with therapy and medication and everything. But I think my experience really emphasizes, it really throws light on the fact that there isn't enough understanding among teachers when it comes to all of this. I feel like school should be a safe space for students to open up in, even if someone doesn't have what can be classified as a learning disability. They should be able to comfortably open up about something like depression or OCD, and not have their problems be invalidated in a learning space like a school or a college or any learning institution for that matter. I feel like it should be a very accepting space and an understanding, safe space for people to open up in. So that's one point that I really want to emphasize on, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we don't talk about how important school is in a growing child's mental situation in general, right? So I'm very glad that you brought that up. In response, Divya, do you have any stories, any opinions, or any solutions that would also be encouraged?
Adding this, Saina, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong. Yes, school does have a very important role in growing up, especially I think it sort of molds us into what kind of adults we become. It's also often those children who face bullying because of stuff that they're going through. Like, people would just label them as crazy, stupid, psychotic, and God knows what. I think name calling is very big, and I think even teachers add on to that. Luckily now, in 2021, here we are, and our teachers have become more accepting, have become more open, and they're ready to talk about it. Like, at school we have conferences and everything. So I think we are progressing towards normalizing mental health in schools, but there's still a huge gap towards the students and accepting them, because we're all very young, we're going through a lot of things, we're getting comfortable with our bodies, with our grades, with all the pressure coming in. And I think it's very hard. It's like, we don't say this, but I think it's really hard being a teenager, because we're going through so many things together and no one wants to talk about them ever. So yeah, I think that's my point.
No, that's great. That's great. I actually agree with you. I had an eating disorder a few years ago, and I didn't know about it. I just didn't eat and assumed that that was because of my mood. I'm not in the mood to eat. But I realized only now that it was an eating disorder, and if it was addressed at the correct time, it would have been great for the 7th grader me. So I think it's very important what you just said. That's great. Yeah. Kian, do you have any opinions, any solutions? I'm actually looking for solutions at this point. What do you think should happen? What do you think the next steps are to, deal with all the problems that we've addressed here?
Yeah. So, picking up on the problem that Saina raised, that is, in schools, it's not a very understanding atmosphere. And I think that's a great point, because in schools, we have sex education, we have fire safety lessons, we have whatever, taekwondo, martial arts, but we don't have any classes on mental education, do we? And I think that is something that we need to have, just, talking to students about mental health, disorders, anything that relates to your mental health. I think we need to do that on a more regular basis. I remember just attending one of these mental seminars throughout my entire 12 years of education. So I think obviously there is a lack of this, because the more you have these educative sessions and the more you raise awareness, the more people are going to be understanding. So the teachers would become more understanding, students would become more understanding, and you would create a good atmosphere for people to talk about their mental health, and also an understanding place. And looking at solutions to mental health just in general, I mean, I guess the best solution is to just foster an environment where people can talk. I think that is the best solution, just being able to open up about whatever it is you're going through, because sometimes it's not serious but you're still feeling low, right? And you want people to listen to you, and you need to talk and you need people to listen. So teaching people how to listen, teaching people that it's okay to talk, and that's sort of what we try and do at Happy Inc. We try to give an environment to people where they can just open up freely about whatever's on their mind, right? So number one solution, just foster an environment where people can talk, and you can do that only by educating people and raising awareness and making mental health normal. It's not a big thing, it's normal, it's not a big deal. All right. And I think also, um, we have a lot of these things where we blame people. We think that only the elders are the ones who ostracize men. Speaking about mental health, but ask yourselves, how many times have you called the person who opened up a softie or something like that? I mean, 2 years back, I remember I used to do that. I'm guilty too. But after going through that counseling process, I learned. And I keep emphasizing on this point, and it sounds cliched, but just knowing more about mental health, giving you opportunities to open up, that just shows you that it's all right. It's nothing big, but it's also very important. So these are the solutions I feel could address these challenges.
No, that those are some great points you've raised there. Actually, Saina, do you have any inputs regarding this?
Absolutely. So, two things, talking of solutions, I think a good place to start, as Kian said, would be if we foster an environment where people feel comfortable with communicating. And also, in schools, colleges, and any sort of educational institution, if our teachers could just understand that we are more than just students. Being a student is a part of my identity, but I do have a home that I go back to. I have family, I have personal problems, and I don't just think about school and academics at all times. So there are a lot of factors influencing my academic performance, and I feel like that would be a good place to start, is to just look at a person from a regular perspective and not just as a student at all times. I think that is a a good place to start as well. And another thing that I've spoken about time and again, I've spoken about this particular psychologist and this book time and again. So my favorite psychologist, Dr. Guy Winch, he talks a lot about emotional first aid and emotional hygiene. So another thing that Kian said is that, we have all sorts of classes and workshops in school about various topics, but one topic that has time and again been neglected is emotional health and emotional first aid. A young child knows how to aid himself or herself when they suffer from a physical injury. But what about emotional injuries? What about emotional wounds? How do you deal with big feelings? How do you talk about big feelings? What are you supposed to do? How are you supposed to communicate them? That is something we don't learn. How to maintain emotional hygiene, in the sense that how to draw boundaries with people. That is something that we aren't taught. And what I really want students to know, and not just students actually, what I want everyone to know is that um, we're taught how to do well in life, how to thrive academically, career wise, but nobody tells you that you don't have to just be mediocre when it comes to your emotional health. You can thrive emotionally, you can be happy. You don't just have to hang in there at all times and just barely survive. When it comes to your emotional health, you can do well. You can you can go for therapy, you can be a more functional person. We live in a very dysfunctional world, where we all have dysfunctional coping mechanisms. We all make mistakes. We all have somewhere a self-sabotaging trait or two. So I think, again, therapy is always beneficial for everyone. I think professional help is always good. And I think that is also something that should be encouraged in schools. So yeah, speaking of solutions, one is, communication, letting teachers know that we have a life beyond school as well, and teaching emotional first aid and emotional hygiene. I think those are some good places to start.
Yeah. The whole concept of emotional hygiene that you just brought up, that's, I feel like that's very important. I keep saying I feel like that's very important to everything you say, but it's true, these things are important. I personally, I've never heard of emotional hygiene used the way you've used it. The word hygiene used the way you've used it, and I'm almost 18. So yeah, it's great that you brought it up. Divya, sorry, I'm so sorry. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree with Kian and Saina. We should create an environment within schools and households where we talk from an earlier age that, mental health is okay and it's okay for all genders as well. I don't think we've noticed, but, often we've been told that, oh, don't cry, you're a guy, men are supposed to be emotionally strong. Toxic masculinity, and it starts from our houses. It's okay if women cry, but it's not okay if men show their feelings. Even in schools, that often happens. Where when we are going through something like Sana said, that teachers don't realize that we have a life beyond academical and performances slash studying and whatever. We have something else. We have a personality that defines us more than our marks do, more than our careers do. And we should be told how to uphold that and how to nurture that as well. No one teaches them the studying part of it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to stop saying I agree with that, because I agree with you. I agree with all of you. You spoke about the entire men don't cry, girls play with dolls kind of thing. Kian, as the only man here, have you faced anything like that where people told you have to harden up because you're a man and men don't have feelings?
Okay, so this is pretty interesting, but no one told it to me, but I used to do it a lot. I never used to like sharing about whatever I went through. I was a very, restrained kind of guy. I wouldn't share any problems. I would just go through them by myself, and it led to a, accumulation of a lot of problems. So I think you've raised an interesting problem here, that even though nobody told me, I just straight up assumed that I had to be strong since I was a male. And, I think that that's a very important problem that stops mental health from being normalized in society today. And there are these invisible barriers. Maybe society will judge you, maybe you just have some wrong beliefs. And addressing these invisible barriers that we can't see but exist, and is such a pressing issue in society, is something that we need to do. And for me, I just thought that I shouldn't open up, I shouldn't talk about my problems. I'm strong, I'm a warrior, whatever nonsense. And but eventually I just reached a breaking point where I had to open up. And I mean, I never wanted to reach that breaking point again. And so, just to look after myself, I make sure that I open up, and there's not a problem with it. I mean, I used to think that it was a big thing to open up because I've seen movies where, the protagonist is like the school guy who doesn't do anything. And I wanted to be that macho guy. But later on, I realized that that guy is an idiot. And I just have to open up, and it's not a big deal. So, I mean, it's that simple. I mean, we make it too complicated. You just need to open up. That's all. And I've learned it, and I try and apply it. Sometimes that macho-ness just comes into my life sometimes, but I think I know better. And it's important to put myself first and my mental health. It's important for me to prioritize that. And so, yeah, I love being macho, but I also like keeping myself happy. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Another great perspective on this. So we have approximately 5 to 7 minutes left. So I'm actually hoping that you could give me your concluding words. What would you like to leave this audience with? I'll start with you, Saina. I can see your finger.
I have something to say. Just want to wrap it up. This is a very important point I wanted to touch on. So I just want to talk a little bit about something that I feel all of us have been victims of, which is the hustle culture and the glorification of this toxic hustle culture, as students, not just students, anybody born into this capitalist world at some point has been a victim of this hustle culture. And I just want to talk about how toxic and unsustainable that is. Pushing yourself beyond your limits, staying, not sleeping for so many nights in a row, studying, hustling, that toxic hustle culture that I'm talking about. I just want to talk about how, as students, we need to have a very sustainable and balanced routine in place, wherein we are able to meet our goals, we are able to accomplish things, but at the same time we find enough time to look after our mental health. And that should be something that is very much included within our schedules as students. And and schools, I think, and schools and colleges should encourage that. And I often find people glorifying this hustle culture concept, and that really disturbs me. And I really want to know your thoughts on it, all of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, actually, I'd like Kian to speak next, and also answer this one question we've received. Why have we not been able to make mental health mainstream in our education system yet? I mean, we've done so much, we've developed so much, but why hasn't this happened? If you could just add that into your closing thoughts, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to answer that question first. And I think that's a great question. Why haven't we, incorporated mental education into our curriculum and stuff like that? And I think people just don't care enough yet. It's not a big problem. I mean, we have these webinars and stuff like that, but, it still hasn't gone mainstream yet. Education officials, who decide what happens in the semesters, are school officials who can invite these people. I mean, it's not prioritized yet. I mean, in my school, we got a school counselor, I think only like 2 years back. And that's pretty late. I mean, in the West, you see these schools have been having it for a long time, and it's normal to just go to your school counselor and just talk about whatever's on your mind. And I mean, it just started 2 years back, and no one went because everyone was scared that if someone saw you talking to that counselor, it's going to be a huge issue, right? Because I mean, the problem is that no one cares about mental health. And I think it's because it's something you cannot see. It's something you feel, and it's something a lot of people go on their own. And I think we need to stop that. I think, people have to, I mean, it's easier said than done, obviously, but, you just have to start speaking up. You need to help people share about what they're going through. And you also need to, push people to prioritize mental health as well. I mean, it's as important as fire safety and other things like that. It should be mandated, in fact, to give education about mental health. And, picking up on what Saina said about hustle culture and stuff like that, I think I'm going to bring another problem inside, and that is we resent ourselves too much. We're too hard on ourselves. I think I used to have this problem a lot last year when I launched Happy Inc. And I wanted the company to be, successful, help as many people as possible. But then I experienced bad burnout because I was just too hard on myself. If I didn't work for like 12 hours a day, I would, like, yeah, what's wrong with you? You're a lazy piece of nothing. And I was really hard on myself. And I think, if a lot of us, if we don't wake up on time, if we don't like, live these perfect lives, we're too hard on ourselves. If we eat a packet of chips, we resent ourselves. We're just, we don't care about ourselves enough. We need to be a bit more, narcissistic would be the word I'd like to use, but we need to look after ourselves better. We need to stop being so hard on ourselves and look after ourselves, care about ourselves. And you'll just see that we feel a lot more better. And I think, I spent 4 months of burnout because of all of these problems. But now that I'm back, now that I've understood what the problem was, I'm like, chill. So if I don't do something, I'm like, okay, you know what, that's all right. And I'll get it done sometime. I have faith in myself. So I think you just have to trust yourself and don't hate yourself too much because it's not good. It sucks actually. So yeah.
Yeah, that's some good. That's good. That's good stuff to close with. Divija, what would you like to add to this? What would you like to end this with?
Yeah. So one thing that's really important we often miss upon is that when we're teenagers, of course, we're developing bodies and like everyone's becoming comfortable with the new body. And I don't think that actually happens perfectly because in that process, within our friends, we're always judged by them. And thanks to Photoshop, we feel worse about our bodies. That's why, that's where body dysmorphia comes in. And I don't think a lot of people actually notice that, our parents would just say, oh, it's just normal teen hormones. Or it's, it's just normal because she's becoming a teenager or whatever. But it's not normal. We should talk about that as well. And not to mention, like, China noticed and picked out with the hustle culture, if we eat this chocolate, then we're gonna punish ourselves because we're not gonna look like that celebrity. Or if we don't study for like 7 hours a day, we probably won't go to that college like all our other friends are studying. And especially with like, I think the Asian culture where marks are like they sort of define us and like our entire families and relatives sort of like really push onto us, and it's like, oh, you're in 10th grade, oh, you're in 12th grade, you better go to a good college. There's a whole lot of pressure from everywhere. Like, we're supposed to look perfect, we're supposed to be perfect academically, we're supposed to be good at extracurriculars, and I think it's just a lot expected out of us. As being 14, 15, 16-year olds, we're expected to be perfect and like the best children that anyone can ever have in society. And I think that's just it's just a whole lot of pressure, and we should be able to talk about that. And like now, of course, schools are getting counselors and psychologists, even my school. But of course, I go to one of the best schools. What about the other schools? Like, a lot of schools that never even speak about it. Like, it's just the top three, four schools, which is like, what about India's like a large country. So what about the rest, millions and millions of other schools in our country? No one's ever even, and it's so bad. Many people don't even know the definition of mental health. You're just like, oh, Pagal Khana wala. Like, it's just a whole lot of stigma around it as well in our society, which should be broken and should be in terms with.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You just cut off for a minute. But that's okay. Uh, yeah, I think our conversation today brought up some great points. We brought up the fact that we need to care more about our mental health. That attention is required. We got some great solutions for it. And personally, I think this was a very productive discussion. I am so glad you took time out of your day to come here and talk about all this. Um, we have actually run out of time, so I'd just like to thank you. I'd like to thank Collegey for giving all of us the opportunity to actually speak about this, because not many people ask the teenagers. They all speak about our mental health, but they don't ask us, which is crazy. So thank you for coming. Thank you for letting us speak, and have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Nandini, Saina, Kian, and Divija. This really is, Collegey is your platform to begin with. And that was a fantastic discussion. I mean, everything that all of you said. And we really hope that, this conference and the speakers who are coming and talking today are really, listening into you and offering you some good points out there.